"Ma'am, you can't bring him in here." The guard's voice cut through the laughter of the gala like a blade through silk. Yet Evelyn Cole didn't slow her stride. The homeless man beside her shuffled awkwardly, clutching the leash of a limping golden retriever. 100 eyes followed them across the marble floor of the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, where crystal chandeliers glittered above and judgment shimmered just as bright below. Evelyn's heels clicked a sound of defiance. Tonight, she wasn't just walking into another charity event. She was walking into a war she had started herself. The orchestra faltered mid-note as the crowd registered the intruder. Gray beard, sun, leathered skin, a jacket that looked rescued from a donation bin. The murmurs began. Who is he? Is that a homeless man? Cameras turned like rifles. And there, in the very front row, Chase Whitmore, her former business partner turned corporate enemy, leaned back with a smirk that could slice glass. "Well, Eve," he said under his breath, "you finally lost it." Evelyn ignored him and guided the man toward the stage. The dog Buddy, she remembered his name, limped faithfully beside them, tail thumping with gentle trust. When she reached the microphone, her reflection caught in the curved chrome of the podium. For a fleeting moment, she saw her father's watch on her wrist, a gift from the day she became CEO of Coal Dynamics, and wondered what he'd think now. "Good evening," she began. The room quieted. "Tonight's auction will raise millions for art, technology, and all the things we tell ourselves make us better people. But progress isn't real if we walk past the ones we've left behind." Her hand gestured to Nick Rivers. "This man has no title, no stock portfolio, no PR team. Yet he has what most of us spend fortunes chasing: grace under pressure." A ripple of confusion. Then irritation. Chase stood, voice slick as oil. "So the rumor's true. You're using your own gala to parade charity cases. That's bold, even for you." Evelyn's eyes flicked toward him. "I prefer the term guest of honor." He laughed softly. "You'll regret this. The board doesn't appreciate stunts." The tension cracked like static. Security shifted uneasily near the stage. Buddy gave a low growl, deep and warning. Evelyn placed a calming hand on his head. "He's fine," she said, her voice steady but edged with fire. "He just knows the smell of cruelty." The audience gasped a mix of admiration and horror. Chase's smirk vanished. "Be careful, Evelyn. You're playing with your reputation." She turned back to the microphone. "Reputation?" she echoed. "If it can't survive kindness, it's not worth having." For a heartbeat, silence blanketed the hall. Then whispers again, hungry and relentless. A journalist near the bar whispered, "She's finished." Evelyn smiled faintly. "You wanted authenticity," she said. "Here it is." She reached for Nick's hand, lifted it into the light. "This man is a veteran. He built solar turbines before a scandal buried his name. And when the system turned its back, he built something stronger: faith." Nick looked startled, then stepped forward. His voice, when it came, was low and rough as gravel. "I'm not special. I just stopped pretending the world owes me anything. Maybe that's freedom." The room held its breath. Even the cameras seemed to pause. Then Chase clapped once, slow and mocking. "Touching. Maybe next year we'll auction off street sermons." He turned to the board chair. "End this, before she drags us all down." The guards approached. Evelyn's phone buzzed with a message from her assistant. "They're threatening to cancel the merger vote. Step off stage now." She silenced it. Heart pounding but outwardly calm. "If you've ever seen someone dismissed for looking the part of failure," she said into the mic, "ask yourself why success feels so afraid of mirrors." The guards stopped, uncertain. Buddy barked once. Sharp and commanding. The sound ricocheting off marble. Nick reached down to steady him, murmuring softly. The gesture gentle, protective, shifted something invisible in the room. A few claps began, hesitant at first. Then joined by others. Evelyn exhaled quietly. Chase's smile vanished. "You've made a spectacle," he said coldly. "And a point," she replied. "I'll take both." She stepped off the stage. Cameras followed as she crossed the hall, Nick at her side, Buddy padding faithfully between them. "You think this buys you moral high ground?" Chase called after her. Evelyn didn't turn. "No," she said, "it just reminds me where the ground really is." In the elevator, away from the noise, the city lights stretched across the glass like spilled diamonds. Evelyn's hands trembled. "That may have been the stupidest thing I've ever done," she murmured. Nick gave a small shrug. "Sometimes stupid looks a lot like courage." She almost smiled. "And what does courage cost these days?" "Everything that's fake," he said. The elevator chimed. Parking level. Rain tapped against the concrete ramp like impatient fingers. Evelyn opened her umbrella, motioned him toward her car. The sleek Tesla gleamed beneath the fluorescent lights, a spaceship in a forgotten world. You still want to come with me? She asked. You might not have a job tomorrow. Ma'am, he said, meeting her eyes. I haven't had one for years. But tonight I've got somewhere to be, and that's more than most days. Buddy jumped into the back seat, circling once before curling up. Evelyn slid behind the wheel, breath fogging the glass. Outside, thunder rolled over Los Angeles. You realize, she said softly. You may have just witnessed my public execution. Nick leaned back, closing his eyes. Then maybe it's about time someone killed the lie. For a long moment, neither spoke. The rain thickened, washing the neon into rivers of color. Evelyn looked at the man beside her, creased face, calloused hands, eyes too clear for the life he'd lived, and felt the strange, frightening warmth of purpose. You built trust, she whispered. That's rarer than gold. He smiled faintly. Trust doesn't shine, ma'am. But it lasts. Buddy sighed, his head resting on Evelyn's shoe, grounding her in silence. She started the engine, headlights slicing through the storm. Behind them, the museum glowed like a cathedral of vanity, fading smaller in the rearview mirror. Ahead lay rain, uncertainty, and maybe, finally, truth. The morning had begun with sunlight slicing through the haze above Santa Monica Boulevard, the kind that made the city look gentler than it was. Evelyn Cole sat behind the wheel of her Tesla, watching volunteers unload crates of canned food beside a soup kitchen. Her assistant had begged her to skip the visit and head straight to the hotel to prepare for the gala. But she had ignored the suggestion. She wasn't there for photo ops. She had come because, for once, she wanted to see where the money actually went. On the sidewalk, a line of men and women waited patiently, faces drawn from hunger and exhaustion. And there, moving between them with a steady, quiet rhythm, was the man who would later follow her into the museum like a spark into gasoline. He was helping others first, handing out bowls of chili, then waiting until the end for his turn. The dog, a golden retriever with one cloudy eye, stayed close by, tail wagging weakly. Something about the way the man crouched to talk to an older veteran caught her attention. He listened, truly listened. The kind of attention Evelyn rarely saw even in her boardroom. When the line thinned, she stepped out of the car. You work here? She asked. He looked up, startled, shading his eyes from the sundae. Volunteer when they let me, he said. Name's Nick. His voice was rough, but not bitter. There was an odd dignity beneath the wear. She introduced herself, though of course he already recognized her. Coal Dynamics sponsored half the shelters in the city. You must be proud, he said mildly. All that money helping people like us. The words weren't sharp, but they carried weight. Evelyn hesitated. It's not pride, she said. It's responsibility. Nick smiled faintly. Responsibility's just guilt in a suit. She should have been offended. Instead, she laughed a short, surprised sound. You're not wrong. Buddy sniffed her shoes, then leaned against her leg as if deciding she was acceptable. He likes you, Nick said. He's a good judge of character. Evelyn crouched, scratching behind the dog's ear. And what's he judging right now? Someone tired of pretending she's fine, Nick said quietly. The comment hit closer than she wanted to admit. She straightened, brushing imaginary dust from her sleeve. You planning to come to the gala tonight? He chuckled. Do they let my kind in? They do if I say so. She reached into her purse, pulled out an envelope. Come as my guest. He looked at the envelope but didn't take it. I don't take money for existing, ma'am. Then take it for the dog, she countered. He shook his head. Buddy eats fine. But if you're serious about guests, I'll come under one condition. Which is? You let him come too. She blinked. The dog? He's the only one I trust not to sell me out. She laughed again, not used to being challenged so effortlessly. Fine. Bring him. But wear something that won't get us thrown out before dessert. I'll find a way, he said, eyes glinting. As she turned to go, he added, why invite me? Anyway. She paused, hand on the car door. Because I'm tired of pretending we're helping people when we don't even look them in the eye. That night, as the city glittered under 1,000 spotlights, those words would return to her like prophecy. Now, driving back toward her office, Evelyn replayed their brief exchange. It had felt like stepping off a ledge she hadn't known was there. At a red light, she opened the gala invitation list on her tablet. The names read like a hymn to power bankers, senators, film producers, all of them fluent in wealth. She added one more. Nicholas Rivers, guest of honor. Her assistant called instantly. Evelyn, what on earth is that? Prar will have a stroke. Then tell them to lie down first, she said, and ended the call. In her office. The city stretched below like a glittering circuit board. Chase Whitmore's voice echoed in her memory from their last meeting. Perception is everything, Eve. You lose that, you lose it all. She stared at his old business card pinned to her wall, a reminder of the years they'd built Coal Dynamics together before he'd sold his shares and reputation to greed. She had outmaneuvered him once. Now he wanted revenge. The merger vote would finalize tomorrow, and every decision she made tonight would tip the balance. Still, she couldn't shake Nick's words. Guilt in a suit. In the early evening, she dressed in the same black gown she'd worn 3 years earlier, the one from her father's memorial. The fabric felt heavier now. When she fastened the old watch around her wrist, she remembered his voice, steady, warm. Don't measure people by what they can give you, Evie. Measure by what they can withstand. Outside, thunder rumbled faintly over the Pacific, warning of a coming storm. At 7:30, the car pulled up to the museum entrance. Guests flowed inside, sequins flashing like signals. But Evelyn's eyes searched the edges of the crowd until she saw him, Nick, freshly shaved, hair damp, wearing a borrowed blazer, and trousers slightly too short. Beside him, Buddy trotted, a red scarf tied neatly around his neck. The sight made her smile despite herself. You clean up well, she said as they met near the entrance. You too, he replied. Though I can't tell if you're nervous or just pretending not to be. Both, she admitted. You don't have to do this. You're the one walking me into the lion's den, he said. I've survived worse. Inside, chandeliers glimmered like stars caged in crystal. The air smelled of perfume and old money. As they entered, conversations faltered. Evelyn could feel the judgment before she heard it. Nick kept his shoulders straight, Buddy at his heel, eyes scanning the art-lined walls as if they belonged to him. When the orchestra started again, Chase appeared near the bar, surrounded by allies. Well, he drawled, the Queen arrives with her court of miracles. Evelyn's smile was surgical. Good evening, Chase. I hear you've got a surprise planned. You could say that. You know, image is everything in this business, he said softly. You play the saint too long, people start checking for horns. Then let them, she said. At least I'll know where I stand. As she walked away, Nick whispered, he doesn't like losing control. He never did, she replied. The rest of the night unfolded toward the moment captured in every headline the next day. The woman who brought a homeless man to a billionaire gala. But before the microphones, before the outrage and applause, Evelyn found herself glancing at Nick's reflection in the mirrored walls. He looked out of place, yes, but also grounded, as if he belonged more than anyone there. You sure about this? He murmured as they approached the stage. No, she said. But I'm sure about the lie. I'm done living. Buddy pressed closer to her leg, sensing her heartbeat quicken. And when the guard at the entrance muttered, "Ma'am, you can't bring him in here," Evelyn only smiled and walked on, knowing that in 10 minutes, nothing about her life or his would ever be the same. The rain had not stopped since the gala. It came in thin, steady sheets, blurring the skyline and making Los Angeles look like a watercolor left too long in the sunday. From her office on the 43rd floor, Evelyn watched droplets trace crooked paths down the glass while the city below pulsed with indifferent light. The news feeds were merciless. Every network replayed the same footage. Her on stage with Nick Rivers, hand in hand, the dog at her feet. The crowd caught between shock and admiration. The captions swung between rebel CEO defies board and publicity stunt or breakdown. She muted the television and stared at the empty space where her father's photo used to sit. She had moved it into a drawer that morning. She couldn't bear to look at it. The intercom buzzed. Miss Cole, Mr. Whitmore is here to see you, her assistant said. Evelyn's stomach tightened. Send him in, she replied. Chase Whitmore entered without hesitation, immaculate as ever in a charcoal suit and a smile honed to a weapon. Quite a performance last night, he said, stepping toward the window. The press can't decide if you're brave or insane. I'll let history vote on that, she said coldly. You should have called first. Would you have answered? He turned, slipping his hands into his pockets. You've made yourself the story, Eve. That's a dangerous game for someone who still needs the board's approval on the merger. She didn't blink. You didn't come here to talk about business. What do you want? Clarity, he said. About your new friend, the homeless philosopher. I heard some interesting things about him. He pulled a thin folder from his briefcase and slid it across her desk. Inside were grainy photos. Nick standing near a chain-link fence, talking to men in work boots. Another of him outside a bar in San Pedro. The last, a blurry shot of him at a construction site labeled Riverside Project. 1998. Evelyn frowned. What am I looking at? The past, Eve. His. And maybe yours. You've been digging. Call it due diligence. His tone was soft, almost paternal. You're not the only one who remembers how this city eats its own. That Project Riverside was shut down after a whistleblower leaked data about faulty solar panels. The man vanished. I'm told he resurfaced years later. Under a different name. Nick Rivers. She said quietly. Chase smiled. You always were quick. So he told the truth, she said. He exposed fraud. He destroyed investors' trust. Chase countered. Cost hundreds of jobs. He's not a hero. He's a liability. Evelyn leaned forward. Or maybe he's a reminder that conscience still exists in this business. Conscience doesn't pay dividends, Chase snapped, losing his polish for a second. You keep him near, and I promise, you'll lose everything. The board won't follow a woman who brings ghosts to dinner. He turned toward the door, then paused. One last thing. There's a rumor going around that your little guest might be selling his story to a documentary crew. I'd watch my back if I were you. Not everyone you rescue stays grateful. The door clicked behind him, leaving the air thick with his cologne and threat. Evelyn sank into her chair, staring at the folder. Buddy's photo from the gala sat on her phone screen, Nick's hand resting gently on the dog's head. That man didn't look like a liar. Still, Chase's words gnawed at her. She dialed Diana Lopez, her oldest ally, a journalist turned communications director. Diana, I need a favor, she said when the line picked up. Find out everything you can about the Riverside Project. And about Nick Rivers. You trust him? Diana asked. I want to, Evelyn admitted. But I can't afford another blind spot. Later that night, Evelyn drove through the rain to the shelter near Venice Beach where Nick had been staying. The lobby smelled of coffee and wet wool. Volunteers moved quietly, stacking blankets. Nick was at the back, fixing a broken heater, sleeves rolled up, grease streaked across his forearm. Didn't expect to see you so soon, he said when he noticed her. You caused a storm, you know. So I've heard, she said. Chase came by my office today. His expression darkened. That didn't take long. He says you were part of the Riverside Project. That you leaked something. Nick wiped his hands on a rag. He's right. I did. Why didn't you tell me? Would it have changed anything? She hesitated. Maybe not. But I hate surprises. He sighed, leaning against the wall. We were building solar panels for Whitmore Capital. The data showed the models would fail in 5 years. They wanted me to bury it. I didn't. So they buried me instead. His eyes were steady, tired but unflinching. You think I wanted to end up like this? No, she said softly. I think you wanted to do the right thing. It cost me everything, he said. You still want to stand next to me after that? Yes, she said, surprising herself with how easily the word came. Because I know what it's like to lose something for doing what's right. Buddy nudged her knee, sensing the tension. She smiled faintly and scratched his head. He really doesn't trust Chase. She murmured. Smart dog, Nick said. He's got a better nose than most people's judgment. She laughed quietly. But the weight in her chest didn't lift. When she left the shelter, Diana called. I dug up something you should see, she said. A security report from last week. Someone vandalized your parking garage. Same cologne Chase wears was found on a dropped napkin, expensive brand, only sold at one boutique downtown. Coincidence? Not with Chase, Evelyn said. Keep digging. And send me the file. As she drove home, headlights smeared across the rain, slick streets. Her phone buzzed again, a new message, no sender ID. He's not who you think he is. Check the footage before it's too late. She pulled over, heart hammering. The link led to a private video account. The thumbnail showed Nick entering her office building earlier that morning. But she knew he hadn't been there. The timestamp was wrong. Someone had doctored it. She closed the phone, breathing hard. A setup. Chase was preparing his next move. And this time he wanted her reputation burned along with Nick's. Back at her apartment, Evelyn poured herself a glass of whiskey and watched the city lights through the storm. She thought of her father again, of his insistence that justice never came without a fight. She didn't know yet whether Nick was her ally or her undoing, but she knew one thing with certainty. Chase had declared war, and this time she wouldn't fight it in silence. Down on the street, a homeless man pushed a cart through puddles, humming a tune too faint to recognize. She wondered if he knew Nick, if they all knew each other in some quiet brotherhood of the forgotten. Her reflection in the window looked unfamiliar, tired, defiant, human. She raised the glass in a silent toast. To trust, she whispered. May it last. Then she set it down, opened her laptop, and began drafting a speech for the next board meeting, the one that could end her career or finally redeem it. Outside, the rain kept falling, relentless and cleansing, as if the city itself were trying to wash its sins away. The next morning dawned sharp and gray, the kind of sky that pressed low against the buildings as if trying to keep secrets. Evelyn arrived at headquarters before sunrise, her heels echoing through the empty lobby. She hadn't slept. The whiskey from the night before still burned faintly in her throat, a reminder of how close she had come to losing control. On her desk, the folder Chase had left sat open, the photograph spilling like accusations across the glass. The phone buzzed. Diana's voice came through, brisk and urgent. Evelyn, we have a problem. A video's circulating, anonymous upload. Time-stamped last night. It shows you and Nick outside the gala. They're calling it evidence of bribery. Evelyn's pulse spiked. That's impossible. I know. It's fabricated. But it's spreading. The board's demanding an emergency meeting in an hour. She hung up, breath shallow, and looked at the window where the city still glistened with leftover rain. The storm outside had calmed, but a new one was brewing inside her world. By the time she reached the boardroom, the 12 directors sat in tense silence, phones buzzing with alerts. Chase occupied the far end of the table, fingers steepled, face carved in mock sympathy. Evelyn. The chair began. We're facing serious allegations. There's talk of financial misconduct linked to your gala guest. Evelyn stood tall. It's a lie. Orchestrated by someone who benefits from my fall. Chase's lips twitched. Careful, Eve. You're implying sabotage. I'm not implying it, she said. I'm naming it. Murmurs broke across the table. The chair cleared his throat. Regardless, perception is reality in our market. Until this is resolved, the merger is suspended. The words landed like a gavel. Evelyn's stomach dropped. Chase rose, feigning concern. If you need time off to handle this personally, I'm sure we can find interim leadership. Evelyn's voice turned to steel. You don't get to take what you couldn't earn. The meeting dissolved in uneasy silence, the directors filing out one by one. As the door shut behind them, Chase leaned close enough that only she could hear. You built this empire on image, Evelyn. Let's see how you manage when that image burns. He left before she could answer. Hours later, Evelyn sat alone in her office, watching the rain begin again. The city below was a blur of red taillights and restless energy. Nick hadn't answered her calls all morning. Buddy's collar tracker still pinged near the Venice shelter, but she needed to see them herself. She grabbed her coat and left. The shelter was quieter than usual, the staff avoiding her eyes. Nick was gone. A volunteer handed her an envelope. He said to give you this if you came by. Inside was a single sheet. They came asking questions. Said they wanted to help me clear my name. I didn't believe them. But Buddy barked at their car. I think they work for Whitmore. Don't worry, I'm not running. Just need proof. Her throat tightened. He was out there chasing ghosts, while Chase orchestrated her ruin. She drove through the city's wet veins until dusk, following instinct more than direction, until her phone buzzed again. A text from Diana. Found something. Security cam in your garage. Meet me at HQ now. When Evelyn returned, the building was nearly dark. Diana waited in the IT room, a single monitor glowing. You were right, she said. The footage of Nick entering your office? It's fake. But the original file had metadata linking it to Whitmore's internal server. So Chase, Evelyn said. And he left fingerprints on it. Exactly. We have proof, but we'll need to show it carefully. No, Evelyn said, eyes narrowing. We'll show it publicly. Before Diana could reply, a sharp bark echoed from the hallway. Buddy trotted in, tail wagging, fur damp. Evelyn knelt, relief flooding through her. Where's Nick? She whispered. The dog whined and pawed toward the elevator. He must be downstairs, Diana said. They followed the dog through the dim corridors to the service level. Voices echoed, two men, one angry, one calm. You think you can ruin me again? It was Chase's voice, cold and venomous. You should have stayed under that bridge. Evelyn pressed against the wall, peering around the corner. Chase stood near the loading dock, rain blowing in through the open gate. Nick faced him, soaked but steady, holding a small flash drive. Funny, Nick said. You always did like burying evidence. I found this in your old lab's archives. It proves you faked the test results back in '98. Chase laughed, low and sharp. You think anyone will believe a man like you? They will when the files come from your own server, Nick said. And Evelyn knows now. Chase's expression hardened. You won't get the chance to share it. He lunged. The scuffle was fast. Brutal, two men grappling against the slick floor. The flash drive skittering under a cart. Evelyn shouted, running forward, but Buddy was faster. The dog barreled into Chase's leg, knocking him off balance. Nick staggered back, catching his breath. Go, Evelyn, he called. She dove for the flash drive just as Chase grabbed her arm. You'll regret this, he hissed. Not as much as you will, she said, wrenching free. Diana appeared at the top of the ramp, phone raised. Smile for the camera, Chase. You're live. The security feed glowed behind her, every word, every motion recorded. For a moment, the only sound was rain hammering the roof. Then Chase stepped back, realization dawning too late. You think this saves you? He spat. It exposes you, she said. And it ends you. He turned to flee, but her guards were already there. They'd been watching from the monitor room since Diana started streaming. As they led him away, Chase shot her a look of pure hatred. You'll never win, Eve. You're too late. She ignored him, clutching the flash drive. Nick leaned against the wall. Exhausted. You didn't have to come, he said. Yes, I did, she replied. You're not fighting this alone. His shoulders eased, a flicker of relief passing through the lines of his face. Buddy did most of the work, he murmured. The dog wagged, oblivious to the gravity of the moment. Later, in her office, Evelyn watched the file upload to multiple secure drives. The proof was undeniable. Chase had falsified data, destroyed lives, and orchestrated her downfall to hide his own. When the final upload bar reached 100%, she exhaled for the first time in days. Outside, the city lights shimmered through the rain like stars learning how to breathe again. Nick stood beside the window, looking down at the streets. You know they won't thank you, he said quietly. They'll call it luck. Or madness. Let them, she said. Justice doesn't need applause. Buddy rested his chin on her knee, eyes half closed. Somewhere in the distance, a police siren wailed, fading into the night. Evelyn glanced at the watch on her wrist, her father's watch, and thought of what he'd once told her. The hardest part of doing right is surviving it. She finally understood. The storm was far from over. But for the first time, the air smelled clean. By dawn the storm had thinned to a mist, the city still half asleep under a bruised sky. Evelyn hadn't left the office all night. The flash drive lay beside her keyboard, its dull metal catching the first light like a quiet promise. She had spent hours reviewing every file, every timestamp. There was no doubt now Chase Whitmore had orchestrated the falsified data that destroyed Nick's career. And then tried to repeat the same deceit to take down hers. But evidence meant little unless people saw it, believed it, and acted on it. She sipped cold coffee, watching the skyline turn from gray to gold. Today would decide everything. At 8 o'clock Diana arrived, brisk and composed despite the sleepless night. The press conference is set for 10, she said. The board will be there, and so will the Attorney General's office. Once you show the footage, it's over for him. Evelyn nodded, but felt a weight settle deeper in her chest. Over for him doesn't mean clean for us, she said. We let him operate this long. We all looked the other way. Then this is how we stop looking away, Diana replied. Get ready. You've got 2 hours to decide whether you're forgiving or furious. Evelyn smiled faintly. I can be both. She changed into a dark blue suit, the kind her father used to call armor. By 9:30, the conference room was filled journalists, investors, board members, and cameras humming like locusts. Rain streaked the windows. The city's sound muted beneath the steady drum of water. Nick stood near the back, his clothes still damp from the night before but his posture unshaken. Buddy sat obediently at his feet, wearing a new collar with the company's logo stitched in gold thread. When Evelyn walked in, conversation stopped. She stepped to the podium, palms flat on the wood, and began. Last night, evidence came into my possession proving that several years ago, and again in recent months, fraudulent data was used to manipulate contracts within Whitmore Capital data that harmed employees, investors, and this company's reputation. A ripple of whispers spread across the room. She continued. Steady. The man responsible is Chase Whitmore. At the far end, Chase burst into the room with 2 lawyers, his hair slicked and his grin razor thin. You're delusional, Eve. You think you can smear me in public without consequences? She met his eyes, calm. I'm not smearing you, Chase. I'm showing you. She nodded toward the projector. The lights dimmed. On the screen appeared the footage from the security camera. Chase's voice threatening Nick, his hands grabbing the flash drive, his face illuminated by the cold glow of guilt. The timestamp and server ID flashed in the corner, proof no one could deny. Gasps filled the air. The Attorney General's aide stood, already dialing a number. Chase lunged forward. You can't. You did this, Evelyn said quietly. You tried to destroy people who remembered what truth looks like. For a moment, the only sound was Buddy barking once, loud and certain, as if confirming the verdict. Security stepped forward, but Chase was already backing away, his words unraveling into curses. You'll fall with me, he shouted. You think you're clean? You're just like me. No, she said. I just stopped pretending. The guards escorted him out, his voice echoing down the corridor like a ghost of arrogance. The cameras turned back to Evelyn. She inhaled deeply. For years, we have traded morality for profit and called it progress. But progress that forgets humanity isn't progress, it's rot wearing a suit. Cold Dynamics will open every archive, every record. No more secrets. Applause rose, not thunderous, but sincere. Nick met her eyes, nodding once. Later, as the crowd dispersed, reporters chased headlines while the board murmured relief. Diana handed her a bottle of water. You did it, she said. Evelyn shook her head. We did it. And now we fix what's left. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the air washed and raw. She found Nick waiting by the front steps, Buddy sitting proudly beside him. They took him? She asked. Straight to the precinct, Nick said. Guess karma got tired of waiting. She studied him for a long moment. You could have walked away. None of this was your fight. It was once, he said. And I ran from it. Didn't plan to do that twice. She smiled. You're stubborn. Takes one to know one. They stood watching the morning traffic crawl past, both too drained for words. At last she said, You still have that copy of the files? He nodded. Multiple copies. Learned my lesson about trust. Good, she said. Because we're not done. The board wants to build something real this time, shelters, job programs, medical outreach. I want you to lead it. He blinked, surprised. Me? Who better to rebuild than someone who knows what it's like to be torn down? For the first time, she saw him hesitate. I don't do offices. Then make it something else, she said. A foundation, not a company. You name it. Buddy barked softly, as if in agreement. All right, Nick said finally. But only if he gets an office too. He already has one, she said, glancing at the dog. He's the real boss here. The day unfolded in meetings, phone calls, damage control. By evening the building was nearly empty again. Evelyn sat by the window, watching the sunset smear red across the wet pavement. Nick knocked softly and stepped inside, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Peace offering, he said. She accepted it, inhaling the scent. You know, when this started, I thought you were going to ruin me. And now? Now I think you saved me from something worse myself. He chuckled quietly. That's above my pay grade, ma'am. She looked at him, her expression warm but weary. You don't have a pay grade yet. But you will. He raised his cup in mock salute. To new beginnings. To second chances. She added. They clinked cups gently. Outside, the city glowed, fragile and forgiving. For a while, neither spoke. Then Evelyn asked. Do you ever regret doing the right thing? Nick considered. Only when I forget why it matters. She nodded slowly. Then don't forget. He smiled. Same to you. Buddy yawned, curling up by the desk, his tail thumping once before settling. Evelyn glanced at the watch on her wrist, the second hand ticking steady. Her father's voice seemed to echo faintly in her memory. You can't buy integrity, Evie. You earn it one hard day at a time. She finally understood what he meant. The sun slipped below the skyline, leaving the office bathed in gold and shadow. For the first time in years, she felt light, not unburdened, but balanced. You built trust, she said softly, repeating the words she had spoken to him that first night. And it lasted. Nick smiled. Maybe that's all we were ever supposed to build. The lights of Los Angeles flickered on below, one by one, as if the city were waking up instead of falling asleep. Evelyn stood at the window, coffee warming her hands. The weight of truth no longer a chain but a compass. The storm was gone, but its echo lingered, a reminder that sometimes the only way to clear the air is to let it break first. 6 months later, Los Angeles had traded rain for sunlight, the kind that polished the skyline into glass and gold. From the rooftop of the new Cole Foundation Center, Evelyn watched the morning traffic unfurl below like a slow, determined river. The building had opened quietly, no press, no ribbon-cutting ceremony. She wanted the work to speak first. Down in the courtyard, volunteers arranged crates of supplies, while a group of veterans gathered under the shade of an oak tree, laughing over paper cups of coffee. Buddy was among them, wearing a service vest now, tail wagging proudly as he circled between chairs. And standing near the fountain, in jeans and a sun-faded shirt, was Nick Rivers. He was talking to a young woman, a single mother they'd helped find housing, and the expression on his face was the same one she had first seen at the soup kitchen months ago. Calm, kind, entirely present. Evelyn smiled, sipping her coffee. The foundation had grown faster than she expected, part shelter, part training hub, funded by redirected profits and donations from citizens who wanted to believe corporations could still have a conscience. The board had balked at first, but when public faith returned to coal dynamics after Chase's arrest, resistance softened. Justice had not made her rich, but it had made her free. "You're early," Diana said, stepping onto the rooftop, her hair caught by the wind. "I thought you had that investors' roundtable this morning." "I do," Evelyn said. "But I needed to see this first." Diana joined her at the railing. "You've built something real, Ev. Not everyone gets that chance." Evelyn nodded slowly. "I didn't build it alone." "Still," Diana said, glancing down at Nick. "You turned a scandal into a sanctuary. That's something the city won't forget." Evelyn looked out toward the skyline, where cranes moved against the bright sky. "I don't care if they remember me. I just want them to keep remembering him and everyone like him." Diana smiled. "That's why they will." At noon, Evelyn drove downtown for the meeting. Her Tesla hummed through sunlit streets that no longer looked hostile but alive. Billboards displayed the foundation's new campaign. "Trust is built, not bought." She parked beneath the same museum where everything had begun. The banners from that infamous gala had long been replaced by a new exhibit on art and empathy, funded in part by the foundation. She walked through the marble hall, where her heels echoed again, softer this time, not as weapons but as reminders. The air smelled of polished wood and fresh paint. A docent recognized her, eyes wide. "Miss Cole, thank you for what you did," she whispered. "My brother's one of the vets in your program." Evelyn smiled gently. "Tell him the coffee's too weak. That'll get him to complain, and that's when I know he's doing better." The woman laughed, and for a fleeting second, Evelyn felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace without guilt. The investors' meeting was brief and cordial. Money flowed easier now that integrity had become fashionable again. Still, when she spoke about transparency and rebuilding trust, she meant every word. When it ended, she declined the reporter's questions and stepped outside into the sunlight. Nick was waiting by the car, Buddy panting beside him, a faint trace of grease on his hands from repairing one of the foundation's delivery trucks. "You missed lunch," he said. "The volunteers are betting whether you ever eat or just run on adrenaline." "Depends on the day," she said. "Today it's caffeine and stubbornness. Both dangerous in high doses." "So is silence," she replied. They started walking along the boulevard, past food trucks and street musicians. The city's pulse had changed. It felt less like a performance, more like a conversation. "You know," Nick said, "I still don't understand why you picked me that night. There were plenty of others at that shelter." She considered. "Because you didn't ask for anything. You just listened. Everyone else was talking about what they'd lost. You talked about what you'd learned. And what was that again?" "That trust doesn't rust," she said, smiling. He chuckled. "Guess I did say that." They stopped near a mural on the side of a building, painted hands, reaching toward each other across a background of sky. Below it, a plaque read, "Dedicated to those who rebuild when the world looks away." Evelyn traced the letters with her eyes. "You think people really change, Nick?" "Some don't," he said. "But some remember who they were before the noise started. Maybe that's the same thing." "Maybe." A breeze lifted her hair, carrying the faint smell of ocean salt even this far inland. The city seemed endless, alive, forgiving. They crossed the street toward a small diner, the kind with worn booths and coffee that tasted of honesty. Inside, the waitress recognized them and grinned. "Well, if it isn't the lady who made billionaires cry." "And her sidekick." "He's the boss," Evelyn said, nodding toward Buddy. The dog barked once, as if in agreement. They sat by the window, sunlight pooling across the table. The coffee was strong, the eggs overdone, but neither cared. So? Nick said, stirring sugar into his cup. What happens now? You've cleared your name, fixed the company, started this place. What's left? She looked out the window at the street, at the strangers passing by with their stories and secrets. We keep going, she said. We make sure what we built doesn't depend on us. That it keeps standing when we're gone. Sounds like legacy talk. Maybe. Or maybe it's just survival. He studied her for a moment. You ever think about stepping away? Starting over somewhere quiet? She smiled faintly. I used to. Now I think the noise needs me more than I need quiet. He nodded slowly. That's the thing about storms, they make you forget how strong you are until you walk out of them. Or until you stop hiding from the rain, she said. Buddy nudged her hand under the table, demanding attention. She reached down, scratching his ear. He's getting old. Nick said softly. Aren't we all? She replied. But look what he started. They lingered there until the sun dipped lower, painting the street in amber. When they left, the mural caught the last light of the day, glowing like a silent benediction. Later that evening, back at the foundation, Evelyn stood alone in her office, watching the city lights come alive one by one. On her desk lay a framed photograph from the gala, not the scandalous one, but a candid shot Diana had found later. Evelyn, Nick, and Buddy caught mid-laughter, unguarded and human. Beneath it, she had written a line from her father's journal. Do the right thing, even if no one claps. She smiled, turning off the lamp. Downstairs, the last volunteers were locking up. Nick's voice drifted up faintly from the courtyard, telling a story to a group of young men who had just joined the program. The words blurred, but the laughter carried clear. Evelyn stepped out onto the balcony, the cool air wrapping around her. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel the need to be anywhere else. The city stretched endlessly ahead, messy, luminous, imperfect. Justice wasn't a finish line, she realized. It was a direction. And tonight, that was enough. She glanced once more toward the courtyard where Nick and Buddy sat surrounded by light, then whispered to the wind. You built trust and it lasted. The breeze stirred, gentle and knowing, as the city below glowed with quiet faith that even in a world built on ambition, decency could still have the final word.